Hey guys, this is Belinda with Willow Birch and Clover, and welcome back to my channel. Today we're going to begin construction on this little journal that we're making for Mother's Day, for gift giving of any kind or to keep for yourself. And the first thing that we're going to work on is putting the pages together inside before we put the cover on and before we embellish. So this little section right here is what I call our book block, and we'll be using hinges for the construction, and we'll get to that in just a second. But first I want to prepare our pages. Now what I've pulled out are the 4 signature pages like this that I said that I printed front and back. And if you need to catch up and see what I'm talking about, you can use any paper kit you want, but if you decide to use this one that I'll link below in my Etsy shop, this is, I tell in my paper selection video in this series, which will be on a playlist on my channel for you. And the name of it is Making a Junk Journal Together, if you want to start watching that playlist. But I tell how I print these pages front to back and exactly what I put on each one. But the 4 signature pages with the ladies, and I've got, I think 6 pages of coffee stained paper, 4 pages of the stained ledger paper, and then this is the grid, the dotted grid paper. It's kind of hard to see because I got it really grungy. Here's a page where you can see a little better what I'm talking about with the little dots all over. I've got 3 pages of that, and then I've got 3 pages of the gray grid line paper, okay? For the grid paper, I'm gonna set that aside right now. I don't need that right this second. We're gonna start with our signature pages. Now what I've done is I've trimmed, my printer leaves a white edge around the edge of the papers. I've trimmed that off. I inked around the edges of my papers just because I like that look, and you may or may not want to do that. But then I took each paper and folded it in half, and I used my bone folder, or you don't have to have a bone folder. I'll show you. You can use something like scissors and just run over the crease to be sure that it's creased for you. And then I inked along the center line on each side, and that's just to help me with what we're about to do, okay? I'm going to use my metal ruler. Any ruler will do, but this is just what I have, so I'm using that. And I'm gonna begin with the pages. I'm gonna lay the ruler right there on that inked line that I made, and I'm gonna tear. You can cut your pages in half. That is perfectly fine. The reason I do this is because I like the look of the torn edge on the journal papers after we assemble. So just go down through tearing, okay? Sorry. My fingers don't want to work this morning, but I'm just gonna work and kind of talk to you a little as I do it to explain what I'm doing. But I think you'll get the gist of it, even if you turn the sound off and watch me. Okay, so there we go. I've got all of those torn in half. And now I'm gonna do the same thing with my ledger paper that I've pulled out. Just make a little crease there. And you don't even really have to use the ruler. Probably just tear right in half after it's been coffee stained, because it makes it a little more tearable. Okay, right there. Got that one. I've got 3 of these pulled, not all 4. I've got one to the side. If I need the 4th one, I'll get it and tear it as we work. But for right now, I'm tearing these 3, okay? And then for my coffee pages, stained pages, my 6 pages, I'm gonna do the same thing, okay? Just tearing in half. This really does make a quick little journal. You'll see, I decided to do this sharing on camera because I wanted you to see exactly how I do it. But you get the gist of it after you see one page torn. These I didn't ink. They're thinner paper. I inked on these pages because they're printed on 110-pound cardstock, and I wanted it to be a little easier for me to see where to tear. And with any design paper, it will be easier to see if you ink that center line because the print on the paper makes it more difficult to see. Okay. We're almost there. This is a really easy technique for making a journal. Some of you have seen it, I'm sure. I do have a few tips and tricks if you're doing a hinge page journal on how to keep things even, and a few little things I've figured out as I've done them over the years. So I'll be sharing those with you too as we put it together. Okay, so we have a stack of coffee stained paper that is torn in half. We have our little stack of ledger papers that are torn in half. And we have our signature papers, which are torn in half. Now, the next step in making one of these journals are your hinges. And they're really very simple to do. I'm going to show you how to do them if you only have a ruler. And I'm going to show you how to do them if you have a scoreboard and a paper cutter. And we'll start with that one. Let me grab my scoreboard and paper cutter. And you're going to see that I have glitter all over my paper cutter. I work with a lot of glitter and different things, and sometimes, you know, it's on there. I need to wash it, I know. You'll need something to score with, and you can use a bone folder. This little tool I got from Dollar Tree. So that's, sometimes they're pink and sometimes they're green like this, but it's the same little tool. It has ball ends, okay? Now, to make your hinges, and you're going to need 22 of them. If I use my scoreboard and my paper cutter, I can get 22 hinges out of 2 pieces of coffee stained paper. If I use my ruler, I'm going to need about 2.5 pages. Either way, I go ahead usually and cut up 3 pages of coffee stained paper to be sure that I have enough hinges in case I make any bobos and I don't have to stop and go back and do that. All right, now let me grab a piece of paper, and we're going to score first and cut second. When you're using your scoreboard and your paper, it makes it easier because the strips are narrow, they're 1 inch wide, and it's hard to go back and fold exactly sometimes or to score exactly. So if you have this tool, it's not hard, but it just takes a little bit longer. We're going to start right here, and this is what you're going to score on. You're going to score first on 1/2 inch. Just come all the way down. Now, from that first score, you're going to jump over 1 inch every time. So, 1/2 inch. Your next score will be 1.5, 2.5, 3.5, 4.5, 5.5, 6.5, 7.5, 8.5, 9.5. And even though, as you can see, the paper is always just under 11 inches, just a hair, I think because of the coffee staining, it's you know, kind of short anyway, but the coffee staining kind of shrinks it up. I go ahead and do 10.5, okay? Because the hinges don't have to be perfect. Go ahead and score your papers just like that. Now, we're going to be careful when we're cutting those with the paper cutter because we don't want to make them wonky. It makes them difficult to use, so I really want you to take your time on this part. And what I use is my 1 inch that's on the left side of the cutting line because I can get my hands on it, line my paper on 1 inch, drop my cutter, and cut. And what that creates is a perfect little hinge. You can see it there. and you already creased it. So all you have to do is fold it over and you've got a hinge. I'll do that a couple more times so you can see it. Okay. Drop it down, cut. There's your hinge with the crease in the center. And you're gonna do that until you have 22 hinges. And like I said, I'd make a little extra just in case I made a bobo. Now I'm gonna show you what happens. Let me keep going here. You can sometimes get off a little bit. Like you'll notice that's starting to get, this side is a little wider than that side. That's why I want you to go slow and be careful. But when you finish, you're gonna put all of your hinges down like this to fold them. And you can fold up to that edge and crease with your finger, and you're back on track for right in the middle of your hinge, okay? All right, that's how you do that. If you use a paper cutter and your scoreboard, and like I said, you're gonna make 22 hinges. All right, now let's do it without a paper cutter and scoreboard for those that don't have one. I'm gonna grab another piece of paper, and this is gonna kind of be the same little process. I want you to remember that your rulers are usually an inch wide. So you can lay your paper right there on the edge and tape. There's a 1-inch strip, okay? Right here on the edge and tape. There's a 1-inch strip, okay? I'll do one more and then I'll show you how to fold them. Let me get myself turned around here. Here we go, this way. As the paper gets shorter, you have to pay attention to which way is top and bottom. All right, so now here's a torn hinge. Just like I showed you on correcting a wonky hinge, you still can just take your finger and do that, and you've got a hinge. If you want it crisper, use a bone folder, which I always recommend. It just makes things so much easier. And if you don't have the bone folder, you can even use the handle of your scissors just to press that crease in there, or an old credit card. And there's a hinge, okay? So without the paper cutter, if you don't want to drag yours out, you can do it this way too. But there's your hinge, okay? And by taking just a second longer, you can see what I mean here, though. It's still a quick process where we're going to make 22 hinges, all right? So there are my hinges, and I have them all in a stack, and this is way more than 22. I always make way more than enough just in case, especially when I'm trying to show you how to do something. Now, to put the book together, I'm going to reference the pages in the book that I made last time to stack the pages in the correct order, just so that the book looks exactly like the one I made. So, let me find that. Here it is. Sorry, I had my paper cutter on top of it. All right, I'm gonna open this up and go inside. You will have your stack of papers like this, okay? Now, I started with this paper, so I pull that out, and then I have one of these graph papers in here. And for now, you can just ignore that because we're not tearing or cutting. I'll tell you what, I wouldn't exactly ignore it because you may forget to put it in there. So we'll go ahead and grab one. And I have a piece of the gray lined graph paper. Without cutting or tearing it, I'm going to put it right behind this one, okay? And this is how we're going to continue to line up our pages. We're going to pull from our stacks. All right, next I've got a piece of coffee stain paper. All right, I like the torn edge on the outside, so it's going to go right here. I flip over. Then I've got a piece of graph paper. We'll turn it face down so I can stack to the top. All right, then a piece of coffee paper. Excuse me. My throat is not agreeing. And the left-hand side, if you turn it face down, this will be your outside edge when you turn it over. So this way, okay, coffee stain paper. Then I have on, it's going to be off of the sheet that this little girl is on. It's the second half of hers, okay? This page down. A piece of coffee stained paper. A piece of ledger paper. And I like to keep the holes in my ledger paper either to the top or to the bottom. You may want to rotate them. You may want one up, one down, but that's just the way I like to do it. Coffee stain paper. Then I have a piece of dot grid paper. So I'm pulling out a piece of dot grid paper and I'm going to just lay it right there like that. Then I have the little girl paper like this. Put her face down. Coffee stain paper. It's a little repetitive, but it makes a quick journal and it makes a pretty journal. So that's why I like to do this. Down, so I'll do it like that. And then I have, let me look on the back to see which one this is. All right. You will find this on the back, which was the other half of the front signature piece, and then the greens on the back. So green down, coffee stain paper, coffee stain paper, and then I have the piece that has the little paper doll on it. It's the other half of this sheet that I tore in half, okay? So face down. Coffee stain paper. A piece of dot grid paper. Sorry. Coffee stain paper. Then we're going to do, oh, this one had a cattywampus tear, but that's okay. You'll see when we put it together that this makes them pretty. I'm even going to tear that kind of funny, and I'll put that down like that so that this will be my hinge side. That can be out. Okay. And then the piece that has the medallion lady, I call her, on the front, turn it over. Well, that piece is up. I'm going to leave it like that. Nope. I'll flip it with her facing us. So that'll be the back side. Coffee stain. I had to think for a minute. See, I lose my train of thought too. Ledger. And then should be this brown page. I think this is it. And I want the brown page up, so I'll do it like this. All right, so that's our stack. And when you turn it over, it will look like this. This is how we're stacking our papers. I'm trying to keep these videos short and sweet to watch, but you'll see that you can move through and make this journal in an afternoon. I'm going to stop here, and when I come back, we'll begin to hinge, and that doesn't take very long either. All right, see you in a little bit.